This is all part of the Marble Hill Remembers, and we are very pleased to introduce Minna Andersen, who's going to be talking about the poppy factory. As many of you will know, there's 897 poppies throughout Marble Hill, and there is one for every person who has died from our community within the First World War and the Second World War. And all the names are listed within an exhibition created by our amazing volunteer team. And also Minna herself and the Poppy Factory have been very important in making sure that created. This wouldn't have been possible without the support of the National Lottery Heritage Fund and as part of the Marble Hill Revived, which is a £6 million investment that will see the house reinterpreted, the opening of the cafe, improved sports facilities, and also apprenticeships and jobs and lots of events. So thank you for being here. Thank you for being part of that revival. And we're delighted to see so many of you here today. We couldn't commemorate this year as we had hoped. However, we've been really delighted to be able to offer Zoom sessions. And this was a key part of our plans and to work with the Poppy Factory and present today. So we're so pleased that this can continue. Minna Andersen is loved by many of our organisations. She volunteers for Marble Hill, for Orleans, and also for the Poppy Factory. And she really helps us all to explore and understand history that little bit more. And so we are so pleased that she's come to talk to us for tonight's session. So we very much look forward to Minna's talk. And without further ado, I'm going to admit the few last people in and welcome you to Minna Andersen.
Thank you so much, Rachel, for that lovely introduction, and thank you for having me. It is such an honor to share the story of the poppy day after the Armistice Day. So I'm absolutely so honored and happy to be here because this little flower is so important, so significant. So there are actually, I always say that there are two functions for the poppy. And one function is that we are the country's leading employability charity for veterans with health conditions. In 2010, an initiative called Getting You Back to Work was founded. And that means that since 2010, we have placed over 1,000 veterans with health conditions into meaningful employment. There are 900,000 veterans in the UK, 370,000 are with health conditions. And out of those 370,000, 20,000 need help. They need help and support once they leave the services. And it's those 20,000 that we really want to focus. We have got a team of employability consultants who work up and down the country looking for suitable employment opportunities for our veterans. And the veterans then, once they establish a veteran, employability consultants, once they establish and create a relationship with the veteran, they really offer one-to-one support to them and help them writing CVs and interview tactics, and really help them to integrate back into community. So Getting You Back to initiative is one function of the Poppy Factory. And then the other function, of course, that we probably know a bit more about is that we make poppies. Very often when I show this little red delicate flower to my clients and ask that, what poppy is this? And I always get the correct answer that it is the Flanders poppy. Absolutely right. But there are 42 families of poppies in the world, 770 species of poppies in the world. And this poppy that we know as Flanders poppy is also known as corn poppy or the field poppy. And what's so remarkable about this poppy is that the seed of this poppy can lie dormant in the ground for up to 100 years. And it only surfaces into this beautiful flower when the earth is disturbed, when the earth is churned. It might have been the case that when the farmer was plowing his fields, out of that grew a poppy field. Or, as we know, during the Great War, the battlefields of northern France and Belgium, bombs exploded, trenches were dug, and out of that sheer devastation grew a beautiful poppy field. So the poppy started to mean something to the men on the front line. They picked the poppies and put them into their caps as a good luck symbol. They picked the poppies and sent them home to their loved ones as a symbol that this is me, this is piece of me coming from the middle of this devastation, and I shall return to. The first person then in our story is a Canadian soldier, poet and surgeon, John McCrae. John McCrae, during the Great War, he was in charge of like a little mini hospital called the Essex Farm Dressing Station. So it was just 1.8 kilometers just outside the front line, and that was his task. And then in 1916, him and his men were surprised by something absolutely unimaginable, the German chlorine gas attack. No one was prepared for that, and no one had gas masks, and the devastation was absolutely unimaginable. And the way John McCrae coped in the middle of all that was that he wrote. He got all his feelings out. And after the Second Battle of Ypres in April 1915, he wrote after that devastation, he wrote to his mom back at home in Canada with a little sort of, I just read a little extract from that letter when he says that for 17 days and 17 nights, none of us have had our clothes off, not even our boots. In all that time while I was awake, gunfire and rifle fire never ceased, not even for 60 seconds. And behind it all was the constant background of the sight of the dead, disfigured, and the wounded, and a terrible anxiety should the line give away. And after that, he thought that he might have experienced the worst, but no, a month later, he experienced even something much worse on personal level. In May 1915, he was standing next to his friend, Alexis Helmer, and he witnessed his best friend being blown to pieces. And that absolutely destroyed him. He had to bury his friend there and then. And then next morning when he comes out of his living quarters, there's an ambulance, and he sort of puts back the ambulance back step, sits on that back step, and looks towards his friend's grave, where 12 hours earlier he had buried his best friend. And on top of his best friend's grave, overnight had grown a beautiful poppy field. That was so moving, and he really didn't know how to cope with that, but cope he did, because he united his two best friends, pen and paper, and he put his feelings down, sitting there looking at his best friend's grave. In 20 minutes, he wrote the poem In Flanders Fields. Take up our quarrel with the foe. To you from failing hands, we throw the torch. Be yours to hold it high. If ye break faith with us who die, we shall not sleep, though poppies grow in Flanders fields. that helped him, and he gave all the publishing rights away right away. But no one wanted to publish it. Spectator rejected it, all the newspapers and the magazines rejected it. It wasn't until in December 1915, 6 months later, when finally the Punch magazine published this poem. And you can imagine that it was for the first time people had something concrete to hold on to. It was something remarkable for them to read that and feel the poem. So the poem started to travel. It went viral as anything can go in 1915. And it traveled all the way to America, where American humanitarian, a lady called MOINA Michael, happened to read it. She was so touched by the poem. She it really moved her so much that she made a promise to herself and everyone around her that for the rest of her life she will wear a poppy in memory of those who never returned. And she became known as the Poppy Lady. And then also she wrote her own poem as a response to John McRae's poem called "We Shall Keep the Faith." And it's the last line in her poem which says that now the torch and poppy red were in honor of our dead. So it was MOINA Michael who actually established the modern day poppy of wearing it in honor of our dead. So we come to another lady then, French lady Anne GUERIN. Anna and MOINA, they met at a conference after the war in New York, and Anna was so mesmerized by the enthusiasm what this American lady was trying to do with the poppy, that she thought that, okay, well, I take that slightly further. She was extremely wealthy in her own right. So she decided that she starts taking the poppy around the world and makes the poppy as a global remembrance symbol. She traveled to Canada, to New Zealand, to Australia, and I think it was 1920. So it was a huge undertaking. And then she makes her way to London in summer 1921. Earl Haig, amongst a few other men, had just founded British Legion. So Anna came and had a meeting with Earl Haig, because what was very important was that Anna back at home in France had an artificial flower company. So she came to London to have a meeting with Earl Haig, and she had this fabulous idea that how about that in my factory in France, we make poppies and sell them and use that money to help people who were left destitute after the war. And Earl Haig said, the fabulous idea, off you go. So the first Poppy Day was established, but there was a slight little issue because there was no money. There was it was now 1921, and after the war there was no money. And even if there was a bit of money, it was seen frivolous to use that money to buy artificial flowers. But Anna, thank goodness, she was a very shrewd businesswoman, and she then took the responsibility of making flowers, making flowers using her own money. So after the meeting with Earl Haig, she writes to her parents in France in September 1921 when she says that the Brits loved my idea about the poppy, but they had no money in their treasury to order their poppies. It is now September and the Armistice Day is in November. I offered them to order their poppies in France at my own responsibility, that they would pay them later. I'm glad they accepted my offer. And aren't we glad? Because of Anna's perseverance, the sort of the idea of the Poppy Day was born. And here next to Anna, we have the first ever poppy. So they look like this. There's a green piece of paper saying that made by women and children in the devastated areas of France. It was a huge success. About 106,000 pounds was raised, which in today's money is about 2.5 million. Huge success. So then we come to the gentleman, probably most important when we think about the poppy factory, our founder, Major George HOWSON, MC. He was an engineer from Hampshire Regiment and got very badly injured in Passchendaele. And then when he returned back home as a disabled veteran, he realized that he certainly wasn't the only one in this kind of condition, that he wanted to help other men in same kind of situations who were left disabled and had health conditions because of the war. So in 1920, he founded a charity, Disabled Society. He had this massive idea that he wanted to help everyone. But he didn't know what this disabled charity should do. He looked for ideas and he was this close to buying a jam factory. So we are this close to making poppy factory jam. But of course that didn't happen because he was very closely following the journey of the first poppy day. Having seen that it was a success, he approached then Earl Haig saying that, hey, hold on. Why are these poppies made in France that we have hundreds of thousands of men who are disabled, who need something to do, who are veterans with health conditions? Let me and my disabled society and my men make poppies. So Earl Haig said that fabulous idea. Here we go, go and make poppies. So this was May 1922. And after the meeting, George HOWSON, he writes to his mom and dad in Henley-on-Thames. He was very concerned. He writes, this is a little extract from his letter when he says that, I have been given a check for £2,000 to make poppies with. It is a large responsibility and will be very difficult. If the experiment, and he uses the word experiment, if the experiment is successful, it will be a start of an industry to employ 150 disabled men. I do not think it can be a great success, but it is worth trying just to give the disabled their chance. So he wasn't very confident that he could pull this off, but so he does, as we know. The first factory was founded in South London in Bermondsey in May 1922 with 5 men. And here in the middle, George HOWSON is surrounded by his first 5 men. He had 2 conditions when he was employing his men. First one was that his men had to be 80% disabled. 80% disabled, huge percentage. It meant that they were amputees, well, arm or leg, or very often both. Because in those days, if you had lost a limb, you were asked to come in front of the War Pensions Committee, and in front of everyone, your remaining limb was measured. And every little inch, millimeter, whatever you had lost, you got tiny bit more money. And quite understandably, George HOWSON didn't agree with this. So his men had to be 80% disabled. And the other condition was that his men had to have a family. His men had to support family, wife and children, and that's it. And here he's surrounded by his first 5 men, and it grew and grew and grew, and we are still on that same journey. The factory in South London became very, very small very quickly. And also South London was very polluted in 1920s. And if you remember, a lot of his men were at the receiving end of that German chlorine gas attack. So there were respiratory problems. So he started to look for premises where the air is clean and where there are sort of space for his men to work and live. And he came to Richmond. And what a wonderful place this is. He bought an old brewery on Petersham Road and a large plot of land. And he bought built 70 flats for his men to live in. And we have been in Richmond ever since 1925. And George HOWSON, he was a sort of huge huge legend. He was so loved by his men and the disabled community and the veterans community that when he died in 1936 at the young age of 50, it was a massive blow. Absolutely huge blow for everyone who was touched by George HOWSON generosity. So what we do here then today in Richmond, well, we are keeping George HOWSON's legacy alive because we make poppies. Yeah, it's slightly different as we know from previous years because of the pandemic. But we have 4 home workers who this year made 4 million poppies by hand. The total need for poppy appeal this year, I think it was still 40 million was ordered. And but the rest of the poppies are made in Royal British Legion's factory in Kent by machines. Here comes an interesting bit then. Royal British Legion and Poppy Factory are 2 completely different charities. Royal British Legion is our only customer. Every year they tell us how many poppies, wreaths, remembrance symbols, how many of everything they need. We source the material, we make everything, we sell everything to them at cost, and that's where our relationship ends. So Poppy Factory as a charity has to generate its own income. So poppies, we make poppies, and then we make also these bigger poppies, about I think 200,000 this year. And then we make wreaths. I have here sort of just a sample of the plain wreath. It was about 100,000 wreaths were made this year. And then also we have 2 royal wreath makers who make royal wreaths all year. So 120 royal wreaths or special wreaths were made this year. The only wreath we don't make is, quite interestingly, the Commonwealth wreath. The Commonwealth wreath is made in Kew Gardens out of real flowers. So every year our royal wreath maker and the head gardener from Kew Gardens, they get together. They look for indigenous plants from Commonwealth countries. They plant those plants, and come November they are harvested and made into 2 wreaths, which one of them is then laid down in cenotaph during the remembrance service. And the other one is there just to sort of make sure that if the first one gets broken or wilts away, the second one is there to sort of jumping into action. If the second one is not required, on Monday after the Remembrance Sunday service, it's brought back to Kew Gardens, where inside the Victoria Gate, there's the war memorial, and it will rest there. And then what else we make then? Well, we make these little things. We are now inside Royal Albert Hall, and normal circumstances, it's the Saturday before Remembrance Sunday. This year there was a concert, but there are normally 2 concerts. At the end of the matinee, 3 million of these little petals are thrown down. And at the end of the evening concert, another 3 million. So altogether, 6 million of these come down from the ceiling of Royal Albert Hall, each petal resembling a life lost in global conflicts. And then what else we make then? Now we are outside Westminster Abbey, outside the remembrance field. So we make the remembrance symbols. And this year we made about 250,000 of these, and about 70,000 of the remembrance symbols are in the remembrance field outside the Abbey. And it was also an initiative started by our founder, George HOWSON. In 1928, there was a remembrance service going on inside the Abbey. And George HOWSON was outside the Abbey with his men and catching the congregation as the men and women and children came out. He had placed a battle cross on the ground. And as the congregation came out of the Abbey, he was giving them poppies and requesting that they would place the poppy around the remembrance symbol. And that's how it started, in memory of those who never returned. And there were 2 crosses in 1928. This year, we have planted, and quite a few years. Yes, we have planted over 70,000 remembrance symbols in 300 odd plots. So that's another legacy that our founder left. The remembrance field is there this year, but you only can observe it from behind the railings. And then one last thing that we make is that we make the frame around the tomb of the unknown warrior. Yesterday was the 100th year, 100 years ago yesterday, when the unknown warrior finally came home. And his final resting place is in Westminster Abbey. And as it is the anniversary year of the tomb of the unknown warrior, I thought I'd just spend a couple of moments telling this rather remarkable story, how he made his way home. English Reverend David Railton. He was a reverend and chaplain on the front line. And in 1916, he stumbled across a simple battle cross. And someone had written on the battle cross with a pencil, very hastily written on it, that here lies an unknown British soldier. And those few words moved him. And he thought that there are hundreds of thousands of men who will never make it home to their loved ones, that something more permanent is required than that simple battle cross in the middle of a front line. So this idea, he then started to talk about his idea. And it took initially then 4 years for this to happen. So in November 1920, how the unknown warrior was chosen, that from the 4 main battlefields, Ain, Arras, Ypres, and Somme, an unknown British soldier was exhumed. His body was put into a simple oak coffin and covered with the Union flag. And those 4 coffins were taken to a church in northern France, St. Paul, where it was the task of Brigadier Wyatt to choose the unknown warrior from those 4 coffins, 4 bodies. So he closed his eyes and just circled around the 4 coffins and then just simply placed his one hand on one of the coffins. That's how he was chosen. The rest 3 were taken away to burial in St. Paul, where they rest to this day. The chosen one, his simple oak coffin was placed into a bigger oak coffin, oak made from oak trees grown in Hampton Court. And then King George V chose a crusader's sword to be placed on top. And then this was wrapped into David's flag, Union flag that the Reverend David Railton used as an altar cloth for 4 years. And he started to make his final journey home, representing all those nearly 700,000 men who never made it home to their loved ones. He means everything to us. No one knows which battlefield he came from. No one knows what regiment he represents, because he represents all of our lost and loved ones. He was taken across the channel on HMS Verdun, arriving on home soil the day before Armistice Day on the 10th of November, and then taken by train to Victoria Station, where he arrived at platform 8 at 8:32 p.m., where he stayed overnight under guard. And ever since that evening of 10th of November 1920, there has been a service. Even this year, there was a minimal service on the platform at 8:32 p.m., remembering and honoring when our lost and loved one finally came home. And then in the morning of the 11th, his coffin is placed on top of a gun carriage. And he makes his way through London. People had gathered around along the streets. because it really could have been any one of theirs. He pauses briefly on Whitehall, where King George V unveils the cenotaph for the first time, and then finally makes his way home, where his final resting place has been prepared just inside the western doors, inside the nave by western doors, where in front of the dignitaries, the politicians, King George V, Lloyd George, Queen's dignitaries, but there were a huge number of ordinary people who had lost so much. So in front of everyone, he is laid down, and George V steps forward and drops a handful of French soil on top of the coffin. And then later on, the tomb is filled with 100 bags of soil collected from those 4 main battlefields. And then again, later on, this marble slab, Belgian marble slab, is placed on top, and the inscription is melted gun cartridges collected from those 4 main battlefields. And they buried him amongst the kings because he had done good towards God and towards his home. This all was witnessed, as I mentioned, by the dignitaries, kings and queens, but there were 2 groups of special guests of honor who always moved me. One was a group of 100 Victoria Cross recipients, and the other one was 100 women who had all lost their husbands and all their sons. And the tomb of the unknown warrior is the most sacred tomb in the abbey. No one can walk around on it, not even the queen. And Queen Mother started a lovely tradition when she got married at the abbey in 1923 with future King George VI. She left her wedding bouquet on top of the tomb of the unknown warrior in memory of her brother, whom she had lost at the war. So just quoting a moving little sentence by John Edmonds. When you go home, tell them of us and say, for your tomorrow, we gave our today. And here we are in our today, being so grateful for these extraordinary men who have given us our today. And it is absolutely breathtaking how the communities have come together to remember. It is up to us now to make sure that we don't forget this remarkable, absolutely moving and poignant story. Marble Hill remembers in her way, or in Marble Hill's way, where 897 poppies have been put in the Marble Hill Park, each representing one of our own who was lost in either of the. Outside then the poppy factory, there's a sort of poppy crossing, which is one of the first in the country. So communities come together to remember the ones who never came home. And this is your way then for our way to give back something to help and honor our veterans who have given so much of their life for us. So the Poppy Factory and their initiative, Getting You Back to Work, is really at the center of that. And there are ways of helping us and making sure that this initiative keeps on going. And I leave you with this slide where both the Poppy Factory and English Heritage have got their ways of, if you wish to donate, and even especially during this very challenging year. Challenging for many of us, but also challenging for the charities. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Minna, for your very moving and insightful talk. And we are so grateful for you sparing the time to be able to talk with such open and honesty about the charity, about the Poppy Factory charity, and to share in the Marble Hill Remembers, and to remember those from our community who fought so bravely and fell. I've had some lovely things in the chat to say that was a beautiful talk, so thank you on behalf of us all. If anyone has any questions for Minna, please, this is your opportunity to be able to put them in the chat function at the bottom, which is the little speech bubble, should you have any questions to ask Minna while she's here. And just there is the exhibition that is on site at the moment, which details a bit more about the Poppy Factory, and indeed also about what they're doing at the moment, and we're looking forward to them being reopened soon for their visitor experience. But we have the wreath that we were able to lay was made by the Poppy Factory, and the poppies at Marble Hill were made by the British Legion to support those fallen. If you would like to see their names, that is also listed in that exhibition. So I've got a little question to ask about, will the factory be opening for tours, and when will that happen?
Ooh, that is a fabulous, and I can't wait to have the factory open so I can take you there on real tours. But yes, the factory is even before the pandemic, the plan was to close the factory for a good part of 2020 for refurbishment. The factory was meant to be staying open, but the visitor areas were and are at the moment still under major reconstruction. And hopefully in the spring 2021, I can welcome you back to Poppy Factory and give you a tour and get you to make your own poppies.
Wow, you can make your own poppies. Gosh.
I know.
We'll try
exactly the way they were made in 1922 when the factory was founded. So very exciting.
Wonderful. And obviously, you know, kind of the tell us more about what the Poppy Factory is doing now with veterans.
Well, now during the pandemic, I think it has been quite challenging for many charities. Our 18 employability consultants, they work remotely. And since the pandemic started in March, we have managed to place 140 veterans into employment, which is remarkable under these extremely challenging times. The factory at the moment is, the people are furloughed. So the factory, the production, as we now have just sort of fulfills our order for the Royal British Legion. So that's the busy time of the year is done, but the factory at the moment under these challenging times is closed. But the employability initiative works hard behind the scenes and remotely.
And if people would like to donate to support, you know, the work that's going on, how would they do that?
Well, they can. The slide that shall we sort of take that up? So very quickly to show you the slides. So here are the donation links. And then if you go, especially on think about Poppy Factory, you go online and there are all sorts of ideas. One fabulous fun idea how to donate and help our veterans is to make your own quiz night. And now, of course, we are all at home, so lovely idea to create your own quiz night and then donate the money what you made. Donate to Poppy Factory, and there are other ideas as well. And then also, if you follow us on social media, weekly, hopefully, we will be then fulfilling you with all sorts of fabulous information how you can donate and help us.
Thank you, Minna. And certainly from Marble Hill, we've been involved in the Operation Picnic across the summer, where you were able to do your own picnic and
exactly,
raise funds, which was lovely to be able to support as part of our Arts in the Park programme. I've got, thank you, that was helpful. And I've got a question that says, if the poppy factory sells all its products at cost, how do they raise funds for the Get You Back to Work programme?
Well, it's fundraising. It's ongoing fundraising. And then when George HOWSON in 1925, when he came to Richmond and found this fabulous property right on the riverside, nearly at the entrance to Richmond Park, he bought the land. And as I mentioned, he built 70 flats for his men to live in. Poppy Factory still owns those flats and a lot of other property on the land, which has been then rented out to other offices. And also most of the flats are rented out. I think there are 5 or 6 flats still that are used by our veterans. So that generates some income to the charity, but it's an ongoing fundraising initiative. So we are constantly fundraising. So we are all doing all our own fundraising to keep the charity and Getting You Back to Work initiative going.
Amazing. And I've got a question about, are there any other poppy factories in the world?
Well, there's one in Scotland, Lady Haig's poppy factory, and the Scottish poppy is, I actually have got one there, sort of, can you take one there? Scottish poppy is 4 leaves. It's right at the end. Oh, so my husband is not very obedient. Oh, actually he is. So here is a sort of Scottish poppy. So it's 4 leaves. So, but other poppy factories then, it's interesting that the initiative, it was American lady MOINA Michael who sort of really decided that poppy is a remembrance flower. But as I understand, correct me if I'm wrong, if there are Americans or people knowing better than I know, that there are, poppy isn't anymore anywhere in the US a remembrance flower. And then also in France, it isn't poppy anymore. So I think we are the only one in these terms to make these wonderful, wonderful flowers.
And are there any poppy crossings anywhere else?
I understand that that is the world's only and first poppy crossing. So hopefully that catches on. So next year we will have then poppy crossings all over the country, and hopefully we can then sort of inject that idea globally as well.
I think the world would be a better place for that. Certainly.
I know, wouldn't it be sort of fabulous?
And there was just one last one, which is obviously at the moment in terms of selling poppies, it's quite difficult to get hold of a poppy, but obviously at the moment there's a slightly different plan from the British Legion. Would you be able to share about that?
Well, this year has been quite unexceptional on I think every front, where whatever background you have and your work or charity initiatives, it has been challenging. So it is sort of poppy by post this year, and then it's all happening online. So there have been, I don't think I have seen any poppy sellers or anywhere. So it has been very challenging this year. And also then sometimes I get asked that how about these little ceramic pins? Those are Royal British Legion. So so people very often then wear the same pin year after year, and sometimes we forget to actually get this little important flower. But it is still about 40 million poppies this year. So it has been quite steady for the past few years, the demand for poppy like this, and long may it last. So I really hope that, and the tendency looks that way. So I hope I'm right.
Well, thank you so much, Minna. Thank you for sharing.
Thank you for having me.
Talk, and we're so grateful for your time, and we're sorry that we didn't manage to get to everyone's questions, and in fact someone has just said that in New Zealand there is also a poppy, but it's a slightly different to the British one.
Ooh,
so there we go.
I love this, that I learn things, global things about the poppy, so thank you for sharing that. So I appreciate, so now I know a bit more.
Well, we've certainly learned a lot from you, so thank you very much. And I thought we should just end this session with at the going down of the sun and in the morning, we will remember them. We will remember them.
We will remember them. We will.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for joining, and have a lovely evening. Thank you.
Goodbye.
Goodbye.